The honourable member for Thunder Bay Superior North regarding the economy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives boast that they are the party of fiscal responsibility, but let's look at some facts. The facts show otherwise, Mr. Speaker. This government gets a failing grade on practically every aspect of economic management, or should I say mismanagement. And the most recent budget does nothing to clean up the mess they've made of our economy. Mr. Speaker, unemployment has increased 9% under this government. The youth unemployment rate is double the national rate. Canadians are struggling to support themselves and their families. Canada is 20th in the OECD for job creation. Meanwhile, the government refuses to roll back their job-killing payroll tax hikes. The current freeze on EI premiums means little when the Conservatives have inflated the rates for so long. They're balancing the budget on the backs of hard-working Canadians and small businesses. But Budget 2014 didn't just fall flat on job creation. It fails to invest in the services that are the most important to Canadians. With an aging population in Thunder Bay Superior North and across Canada, our healthcare needs are increasing. Yet somehow we see no investment in healthcare in this budget. The Thunder Bay Regional Health Science Centre recently broke the record for overcapacity and was in gridlock for 5 straight weeks. We are headed for a crisis as this government sits on their hands. They're burying their heads in the sand with their refusal to adequately fund health care, and it's compromising Canadians' right to universal health care. Mr. Speaker, it's not just health care that's in danger. The Conservatives have also neglected the retirement security of our seniors. They've balked at much-needed pension reform and even blocked consensus on the matter. We see no plan to protect Canada's seniors who've worked hard for so many years, only to be abandoned by this government, and their old age. Why is the government leaving our retirees financially insecure? In my riding, it seems the Conservatives have made it an obsession to cut as many vital services as possible. They've slashed local Veterans Affairs, Citizens and Immigration, Canada Revenue Agency, and Marine Communications and Traffic Service offices. And they've cut jobs across the board in Thunder Bay and our region. Northwestern Ontario's pay taxes just like the rest of Canadians, but they're forced to bear a greater burden of taxes as large multinationals pay less than half the USA rate. Declining services aren't the only problem, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives may go on and on about reducing the national debt, but they're the ones who've added $123 billion to the debt since they took office. That's a 25% increase. Is this what debt reduction looks like? It's clear that the Conservative government is misrepresenting the facts. What's even more important is the Conservatives' ignorance of the needs of ordinary Canadians whose personal debt has gone up 26%. Canadians simply can't afford it. The average cost of a house now has risen 52%, and it costs an average Canadian homeowner over $400,000 to buy a small house. How are Canadians supposed to put a roof over their heads, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, Canadians need more than empty promises from Conservatives. We need real fiscal responsibility that puts Canadians first. The Conservatives talk a lot about their so-called economic record, but all we can see are deep service cuts that hurt hardworking Canadians and increased debt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know where my honourable colleague is getting his so-called facts from, but they certainly don't jive with any numbers that I've seen. Mr. Speaker, let me reassure the honourable member that job creation remains a top priority for our government. Through Canada's Economic Action Plan, we are taking real action to support investment, economic growth and job creation, including initiatives that directly support the development of a skilled, mobile and inclusive workforce within an efficient labour market. And our efforts speak for themselves. First and foremost, we are well on our way to balancing the budget in 2015, and our Economic Action Plan is strengthening the economy at the same time. Since July 2009, employment has increased by over 1 million and is over 600,000 jobs above its pre-recession peak, the strongest job growth in all G7 countries since the recovery. Over 85% of all jobs created since July 2009 have been full-time positions. 80% are in the private sector, and over two-thirds are in high-wage industries. Real GDP is significantly above pre-recession levels, one of the best performances in the G7. Both the Independent International Monetary Fund and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development are projecting that Canada's growth will be among the strongest in the G7 in the years ahead. Canada is also the only G7 country to have a rock-solid AAA rating with a stable outlook from all major credit rating agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's, and the list goes on, Mr. Speaker. However, this is not to say that our work is done. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, for example, lists skills shortages as the #1 barrier to Canada's competitiveness. In response, our government has quickly put in place a range of concrete measures to directly support the development of a skilled, mobile, and productive workforce. An Economic Action Plan 2014 proposes further steps in this direction. It confirms, for example, that the Canada Job Grant will be up and running in 2014, which could provide up to $15,000 per person for eligible training costs, including up to $10,000 in federal contributions. The Canada Job Grant will encourage greater employer participation in skills training decisions and ensure that training is better aligned with job opportunities, particularly in sectors facing skills mismatches and labor shortages. And, Mr. Speaker, while the grant will require matching from employers, small businesses will also benefit from greater flexibility in their cost matching arrangements, recognizing the particular challenges they face. To further address skills shortages, Economic Action Plan 2014 also proposes to create the Canada Apprentice Loan Program by expanding the Canada Student Loans Program to provide apprentices registered in Red Seal trades with access to over $100 million in interest-free loans each year. At the same time, it proposes to introduce the Flexibility and Innovation in Apprenticeship Technical Training Pilot Project to expand the use of innovative approaches to delivering apprenticeship technical training. Mr. Speaker, our government believes these findings underscore the importance of transforming skills training in Canada to ensure that funding supports the needs of the labour market. Subsequently, this has also driven the government's commitment to promote education in high-demand fields and the measures we have taken to financially support apprentices and the employers that hire them, including the Apprenticeship Job Creation Credit and the Apprenticeship Completion Grant. Supporting job opportunities for all Canadians is a commitment where we have made important investments and will continue to act, unlike the opposition, who votes against every job-creating measure that we've introduced. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay Superior North.
Mr. Speaker, please, enough blarney from the Conservatives. Canadians need action. We need services we can rely upon and real job creation so we can be financially stable individually and collectively. In Budget 2014, Thunder Bay Superior North and I were looking for support for our seniors and pension reforms, but nothing was offered. And a fee and dividend system that would put a price on carbon and put money back into the pockets of taxpayers. But the government didn't even mention climate change in the budget. We sought intense incentives for small business owners, but instead the government got rid of the $1,000 hiring tax credit and refuses to reduce the job-killing EI premiums and a huge EI fund surplus, really a tax. The government's fiscal plan does not work for my constituents, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives claim to be putting the economy first, but all I can see is them putting Canadians last.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the honourable member would like to introduce a $20 billion job-killing carbon tax like his former colleagues in the NDP, but over here, Mr. Speaker, we have a plan, Canada's Economic Action Plan. Through it, we are creating jobs by reforming the on-reserve education system in partnership with First Nations through the First Nations Control of First Nations Education Act, investing $14 million over 2 years and $4.7 million per year ongoing towards the successful implementation of an expression of interest in economic immigration system to support Canada's labour market needs. helping older workers get back to work by investing $75 million in the Targeted Initiative for Older Workers program to support older workers who want to participate in the job market. We're reviewing the youth employment strategy to better align it with the evolving realities of the job market. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe that Canada's long-term economic prosperity depends on our capacity as a country to realize the immense potential of our people, and that's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.